welcome to our podcast.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Butterfly Effect. I'm Steph,
I'm Liz.
and we're going to be your host in this podcast. And I'm so excited.
Me too.
I'm just super excited because I feel like this is just going to be such a place where we can just be vulnerable and honest and just get other people's stories here to be vulnerable and honest.
Yeah.
So we really want to welcome you guys here.
Welcome.
I think like on this podcast, we're just going to be talking about a whole bunch of topics, and we really want to hear from you guys. Like, we want to hear your story. I feel like what I've learned throughout my life and through my journey is that hearing people's stories is what helps us grow as people.
Yeah.
And hearing other people's opinions and even learning to agree to disagree. Because I feel like as a culture, if you don't agree with something, it's like cancel culture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, you don't agree with me, so we can't vibe, we can't talk. As opposed to, oh, you don't agree with me, that's okay. You know? So I feel like as people, we burn more bridges because we don't know how to agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like in this podcast, like, I want you guys to grow with us. I want you guys to learn with us. We're on this incredible journey, which is what we're going to talk about in this podcast of rebuilding. You know, you're going to learn a little bit more about our stories, about us. You're going to learn about, we're going to touch on it briefly, just like where we came from and why we're in this space where we actually need to rebuild.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I've ever talked about it.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's been like a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't really talked about this journey a little bit, but it's a beautiful one. It's a messy one. It's a vulnerable one. It is one filled with mistakes, but it's one that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, let's get into
So
it.
tell me, how did you get into podcasts? What was it?
Having no friends. And just really wanting to hear people talk.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I think I kind of just stumbled upon them.
Right.
I heard about them like years ago, and I was like, oh, I thought it was just like for people who are boring.
Yeah.
Because like, who wants to listen to something and not see what they're listening to?
Right.
But no, I really love podcasts. I actually listen to them more than I do music in the car now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also another way to kind of connect with people, right? Like what
Yeah,
you said,
sure.
like you didn't have any friends. So this was
didn't.
one way for you to connect with what's going on. And I think also like hearing other people's side to certain topics is really cool to listen
It's
to.
important.
It's important. Yeah. It kind of gets you out of this little bubble.
Yeah.
You know, like as Christians or as believers, like we're believers, like we tend to be in a bubble. Like we call it the Christian bumble.
Ew.
Bumble.
Whoa.
Yo, sponsor me, Bumble.
sponsor Bumble.
Christian Mingle / Bumble. I'm with it.
Oh my God. Can I have some water?
Yeah, a Christian bubble, right?
Yeah.
Where like these topics, like listening to podcasts and their topics, kind of gets us out of that little bubble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are you good?
No. It went down the wrong pipe.
All right, yeah. So today's topic, we kind of want to open up our podcast with you, just kind of people just learning about the season of life that we're in.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, we started this podcast so people can grow with us through this journey that we've been on, just collectively as friends and individually just as women, especially in this culture, especially going through what we went through.
Yeah.
And it's similar. I say we because it's tied in. Our stories are tied in, which is what makes our friendship in a way.
For sure.
In some weird way, it kind of tied in our friendship. But it's important for people to learn just like about us, like why we wanted to do this and the point of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, to start it off, like in no way do we want to bash anybody.
Absolutely not.
Right?
That's not
Like
the point.
Yeah, like we're not here to bash any person's non-profit or church or name.
No.
Well, I'm not even sure if we're gonna mention names.
Absolutely not.
It depends on where we
Probably
go
not.
in this story.
If
but
I wanted to mention names, I would have mentioned names when it happened.
Right.
Not like a
Right.
good amount of time after.
Right. So
So.
I think like the point of it is that this is our story. It's not everybody's story, but
Right.
unfortunately it's our story. And we're going to be talking about a lot of those tough topics on this podcast, trauma. You know, my life is centered around a lot of trauma.
Bendito.
How do Bendito bacala frito. How do you go through that? You know what I'm saying?
Girl.
Like as a believer, like how do I trust again? right? How do you love again? The whole Christian walk, the whole Christian life is all wrapped around this fact of forgiveness and trust and love.
Yeah.
But when you've been through so much stuff, how do you go through that? And I think walking through that journey with me and with Liz is such a beautiful thing. And then hearing other people walk through that journey, because there's people
it's crazy how many people have experienced what we experienced. It's crazy.
Yeah, and how many people feel what we've felt.
Yeah.
Like hearing people's stories and we're like, I've been there. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think it's important to share it, and not only the hardship, but the joys of it.
Absolutely.
Like it brought us through a really beautiful journey,
It
just
did.
individually, personally.
It really did.
Yeah. So do you want to start about like what happened? Or not
Oof.
necessarily what happened, but you began rebuilding your life, kind of in a sense rebranding. Your name used to be Leah, now you're Elizabeth.
Yeah,
So
I go
let's
by
talk
my
about
middle
it.
name now.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to keep that whole part of my life behind me and start fresh after, I guess we left. I guess you could say we left the church that we were going to because some things happened that were not okay. Not a lot of things happened directly to me, but a lot of things were said and a lot of people were mistreated that were really close to me. And I saw that and decided that I did not want to be a part of that place anymore. So
So you started rebuilding.
I started rebuilding.
Right. Yeah.
Why you do this to me? You have me preface when you know I'm the
Yeah.
You know I'm the co-leader.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand like our stories are very different but very similar.
Right. Like mine, I guess, I don't know. It's hard because I've never really talked about it.
Right.
Other than you knowing exactly what happened.
Right.
So almost explaining what happened feels a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean,
it.
I guess we can start up like this. Like the journey for me to rebuild started May, 2018?
Yeah,
A year and a half ago. Right? 'Cause
everything
we're
happened.
2019. It's been a year and like a few months.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
be 2 years this May.
Right. You're talking about when you left?
Yeah.
I think it was after like Easter.
Yeah, it was May.
I don't know.
I remember
April.
it. It was May 1st, I remember. I distinctly remember it being May 1st.
Right. After
Because
Easter.
my
Yeah,
meeting was that Tuesday,
right.
and I left that Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we were going to a church. Obviously, we're
You're
Christians.
better at explaining.
Yeah. Nah. So we were going to a church. It was about 5 years, right? We were in that church.
We were there since the
It was
beginning.
a church plant, and I think this is the first time I've ever publicly spoken out about it.
Yeah.
Because I've been very silent for very long about the whole topic, because I'm very much the type of person that's like water under the bridge, like
Right.
move forward, like let's not talk about it. But in this journey, what I'm learning is that talking about it, there's healing in talking through things.
Mm-hmm.
There's healing and there's more clarity when you begin to just voice what actually happened and say, hey, it's not okay. I didn't deserve that.
Put
right?
a sound to your pain.
Put a sound to the pain. Yeah, exactly that. If you're an artist, as you can tell, like she's the artsy one. Like who says that and like is poetic about it, right? Yeah, put a sound to the pain. Like this is what happened. It wasn't okay. There's different versions of how the story went. Obviously, like every person sees the story differently.
It's unique.
But this is my story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it started with a meeting. It started with a meeting,
Beautiful
and it was many meetings that I've had to this caliber, where it was the same song, same story. The only difference between that meeting and the thousands that I've had before that meeting is that this meeting was the meeting that pretty much woke me up. Because in the meetings before, I was in a place where I felt Jesus telling me to help out with this church.
Right, you didn't feel like you should leave yet.
Right, and I was for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? I went to Bible college helping out with this church. It was a grand old time. Like I'm sold
And
the
you
dream.
were a leader. Like
I was a pastor, yeah. Yeah. Pastor there, licensed pastor. And so what I've started to notice, like as I've been walking through this journey of healing, is a lot of what happens is that we are taught, well, what we were taught in this particular space, that isolation, because a person doesn't look like you or think like you, is what the kingdom of heaven is all about. When in fact, it's completely opposite. Like, I'm learning that community has nothing to do with because you look like me or think like me or are called to the same things like me, right? And I think, like, that's where the story starts for me. That's where my journey began. And hold on, like, something isn't okay here. When it's like I'm constantly being isolated and stripped from people, I'm constantly being told to cut people out of my life because they don't think like how you think or how you build, right? And so because they don't build like that, I can't communicate with you. And that's what we experienced when we did leave, right? We lost everyone. We lost everything, every friend, every person that called us family. And so we sat there and we were like, wow, like, was that real, or was it because we were just building the same thing? And I understand, like, everyone talks about these things where they say things like, well, it's your tribe, right? What's your tribe? Like, what's your language? Who are your people? And I'm with that. Like, I'm with the, like, who are your people? Like, who are the people that you mesh with, that you click with, but not to the expense of, like, if they no longer vibe with you or are part of your group, that you X them out completely and you excommunicate them. Like, especially with a church. Like, if it's a different group, like if it's like a bowling team, like, I feel that, like, all right, like, you know, like, you go separate ways. You're no longer bowling. Now you're playing Pac-Man. But here it's like, you're a church. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not building different things. No. Like, what are you building? It's not like I left and became a Satanist.
No, girl.
Right? I left and I'm still serving Jesus. I'm just no longer going to this church because I no longer agree with the vision or the way that you're running your church. And because of that, that statement alone is what got me completely kicked out. Your family not even kicked out, like excommunicated. Because we chose to leave. There was no option. It was like, I can't sit here under this because this is what's going on.
Right.
And when we made the decision to leave, a lot of people actually that are leaders in that church reached out to us. And they were like, we understand and we agree with you, but they were too afraid to say anything. And I think that's what was hard for me in the rebuilding process, because I think I was expecting people to be like, yo, Steph, I got you.
Yeah.
I care about you. Like, how are you doing? Let's talk.
Especially since you were a pastor there.
Right.
It's like a completely different situation because they're like, in a sense, losing one of their own.
Right. Exactly that.
Yeah.
And I went from being a daughter there to being an orphan. Right. And that was the biggest thing. Like, a lot of lies were spoken in that meeting, where now I started to view God in that light. Like, God sees me as an orphan.
Yeah. You
know what I'm saying? Like, God says to me that if I hang out with orphans, I am an orphan. You know, like, God sees me in this light, that if I don't necessarily, like, if he doesn't agree with what I'm doing, that's it. I'm done, cut off. My whole life has been working for something that was promised to me that I never got. And, like, I started to see God in that way. Yeah. And so I had to really uncover a lot of things. And I think, like, personally, like, for me, I'm such a silent healer.
You are.
You know, like, me uncovering everything, like, I rarely voiced, like, the reality of what I saw. But my entire world was rocked when it came to my view on God, right? Yeah. To the point where I'm like, do I even believe in God? Is he real? You know, like, my whole world is turned upside down.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's the issue nowadays, is that a lot of people look at their leader as their God.
Right.
Rather than just being their leader.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest ways that you know that your view on God might be a little warped, and that's okay if it is right now, because you've been taught that, and that's what you've been taught.
Exactly,
that's all you know, so that's not your fault. But a lot of the time, people, because I experienced the same thing with you, like, wait, he said this, that, the third about my family. Not exactly me, but my family, who is basically me.
You, yeah.
So is that what God says about me?
Right.
And this is somebody, especially if it's someone you respect.
Right.
Like, you take everything that they say like it's like gold.
Right.
I think that's really dangerous. And I think that's the issue with leadership and pastors in general nowadays, is they see that they can capitalize on people's need for God.
Right. Exactly that. And I think like working through some things in the scripture and working some things biblically, like what I'm learning is that the church done today is completely different than the church, the way that the Lord intended the church to be, especially pastors and leaders. And I think what's hard is that they'll quote scripture that this is what they're doing in public. I think that's the scary part, is that in public, we're preaching love of God. In public, we're preaching community and care for your soul. But in private, what I was saying, something totally different. And that's what scared me. Hard. Right. And I think that when I began to uncover that, like really like break things down, like I'm that person, I'm that girl that will pull up receipts and be like, you know what I mean? Like, you seen me do it a little bit today where I'm like, hold on. Like, no. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was not said. This is what was said. I'm very much that girl. And what I've noticed that people don't like that. And so they'll retract it and they'll try to cover, be like, no, but I meant, and I said, and I did. And I'm like, no. Like, I would say,
you exposed yourself.
Right. I will say this till I'm blue in the face. People say things like, well, I take back what I said. You can't take back what...
I literally just said that the other day.
Yeah, you can't. You cannot.
So sorry. I triggered you so hard.
You cannot.
Just pretend I didn't say it.
You can't do that. It was said. It was said. That's why, like, it's so important to understand, like, as believers. Listen to me. I'm a pastor, so I'm used to preaching scripture, right? As believers, it's important to understand in Genesis 1, when the Father spoke things into existence and then afterwards says, let us make man in our image. That means that when you speak something, guess what? It has the ability to kill or make something happen. You have the ability to kill something in somebody, damage somebody just by your words, right? And I think we were talking about this the other day when I said, you know, like I was sitting with the pastor and they were kind of like helping me work through a lot of what happened. And they said, Steph, for every one negative thing that was said to you, there needs to be 10 positive things to undo that one negative thing. So now imagine an hour meeting.
Yeah, no, we're still like, I say because we're kind of going through the same thing.
Right.
Rebuilding and finally found a new church.
Right.
Thank God. But like.
Praise God, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's been a journey.
Yeah.
Long time searching.
It's been a minute.
Finally found one.
Yeah.
That's sad also. But,
right.
What was I saying? Oh, how rebuilding is so hard because you don't realize that sometimes to rebuild, you have to dig up the ground first.
Oof, yeah.
And we didn't realize how deep those roots went.
Right.
Those 5 years of constantly being there, constantly following what they said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Believing every single thing that they said to us, even if it was a lie.
Right.
Mixing that in with truth, you're screwed.
Right.
'Cause then it's like, what's truth and what's not?
Right. And you saying things like, thus saith the Lord, and be like, well, I'm just practicing. Like, but I based my whole life on you just practicing.
Yeah.
Like, you really better believe that this is a word from the Lord before you tell me it.
Yeah.
You got what I'm saying?
Yeah. People talk about the pain, but they don't talk about the pain of also when you're getting over the pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like walking, like I think that it's like the pain of what happened and then like the healing pain, like growing pains.
Wow.
It's good.
Growing pains.
It's good because you're growing, but it hurts at the same time because you're growing from something.
Feels a little unnatural.
It does. Yeah. And I think like that's what started the whole rebuilding process for me personally, was let me uncover every lie and like try to find the truth that kind of undoes these lies. And I think what was hard was not only was I uncovering 5-6 years of life, and before that, because of how I grew up and where I grew up, like uncovering all of those things and then speaking truth on it. You get what I'm saying? And doing it alone. That was hard. Because what I expected was community, and what I expected was the people that I did life with for 5 years, that I did college with, that I did all these things with, to at least reach out. I haven't heard from them. You get what I'm saying? Which is fine. Like, it is what it is. Like, I'm at peace with what happened. I'm at peace that the Lord is like, listen, like, this is what's done. It's done. Like, I'm at peace with it. I believe that the Lord called me from there. I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe that the Lord's mercy and goodness is on my life to call me from that. because I believe it could have ended a lot worse, or worse could have happened to me, as far as like my view on the Father, and as far as my involvement with pushing this forward. Because whether we like it or not, I was a big piece in that, not in a prideful way. But there was a lot of I had my hand in a lot of things.
We're there since like the beginning.
Right. So I think that's where the rebuilding started, was, okay, let me uncover the lies. And then when I uncovered the lies, it was so overwhelming that I think I shut down.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think I think I went into like a like I don't want to do this anymore. Like I changed my mind, let me opt out. And so I started like legitimately numbing.
Yeah, we went through it.
Right? Like we started numbing, like in our own different ways, but numbing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think like I never was vocal about it, and I don't think you were vocal about it either, but I think we still knew, like, you're numbing, I'm numbing. Yeah, we ain't good, but we're just going to keep walking. Like, just act like it's normal. So, and you won't knock down that wall. Yeah.
Wait, okay, but that's what I was going to say. To bring up VeggieTales. Perfect. Because
by the way, we're sponsored, not sponsored.
I love VeggieTales. Oh my god.
Sponsor us, VeggieTales.
Rebuilding is kind of like this to me. It's like how the Israelites were going in and they saw Jericho. And they're like, we're going to take this land. This is my land.
Right.
They saw the wall, but they didn't see what was inside the wall yet.
Right.
They just knew there was a big wall.
Right.
We got to take down this wall.
Right.
But once they took down that wall, there were still people inhabiting that place.
True.
That they had to kill.
Right.
And that's kind of what rebuilding is.
Literally that.
And like conquering new land is.
Yeah.
Is like tearing down a wall, a whole city.
Fortress.
And then inside are people who are armed.
Right. Who want to take you out.
Who want to take you out. And those are the ones that you have to be careful of. It doesn't just end with moving forward.
Right.
You know, you have to there's always land to be conquered.
Yeah,
when you're rebuilding and moving forward. There's always more for you that God has.
Yeah.
But it's not, a lot of times for our lives, I'd say, it's not that easy of a walk.
No, it's not, yeah.
Because I feel like there was a certain time where we're like, woo, we made it.
Yeah.
We're
out of the woods.
Like last year on New Year's, we started crying because we're like, thank God this year's over. Everything bad that happened in this year is going to stay here. And then
it got harder. Sweetie, it got harder.
We saw who was actually inside that city.
Right, yeah, it got a lot harder. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I also think like Nehemiah, like in the Bible, since we're bringing up Bible stuff. Yeah, like Nehemiah, when he talks about rebuilding the wall, like when he goes through the process of inspecting exactly the damage that's done in Jerusalem. You know what I'm saying? Like he was sitting lovely in the king's palace, and then he goes down. Like there's so many significant points in the story of Nehemiah, but like one of the things that really struck a chord in this season of rebuilding was him inspecting. Yeah. And we're like, a lot of people like this is what I think like is so funny when it comes to like culture and the church, where they're like, no, don't touch that, don't expect that, like just let it go, like don't call it out. Like no one likes it when someone's like, hey, like something's not right here. Nobody likes that. I've noticed that when it's like, no, like this is an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, excuse me, like, hello.
That's like a side of God that nobody wants to talk about.
Right. And it's like, it's this sense of like Nehemiah, it says that he inspected everything, not just the wall that he had to rebuild. So it's not just me inspecting my life, but he inspected the people, he inspected the supplies, he inspected the city, right? It says that he walked through the city looking at what needed to rebuild, but it doesn't say that he rebuilt the whole city. It says that he just rebuilt the wall and someone else came in and rebuilt the city. You got what I'm saying? But his purpose was to rebuild a part so that other people can rebuild something inside. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the most beautiful thing that I've seen. And that's what's been giving me peace through this process of just rebuilding. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the sense of like, at some point, like people are at it to help rebuild my city. Right. Like I'm going to rebuild my wall. I'm going to do what I can on my end. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I'm going to heal what I can on my end. I'm going to forgive what I need to forgive on my end. Mm-hmm. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to let go. Right? Let go doesn't mean ignore. No. Let go means I no longer charge you for your mistake. Right? That's me. That's forgiveness.
And and it's okay to talk about it.
Right.
Because it's my story. It's not like I'm sharing anybody else's. This is what happened to me. I'm allowed to talk about that till I'm blue in the face.
Right, and it's what shaped you.
It's my testimony.
It's what shaped you.
It's exactly what shaped me.
In this season, like, I feel like it's so important. Like, people say that when you're young, like, it's your, like, most vulnerable years, like, most impressionable years. But I think also these seasons and these moments, like, are so impressionable. Like, they're so vulnerable. Like, you're in such a vulnerable space that's, like, anything anyone says or any experience will shape you and mold you into who you are as you continue to mature. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm noticing that it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 55, you could be 18, you could be 26, you could be 22. You go through trauma, you go through hurt, you go through pain, and the process of rebuilding from that, you're impressionable.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand, like, who's in your circle, right? Who and that's the thing, is that people are so desperate for community that they'll just put anybody in their circle. And I think, like, I'm not about that. Like, personally, like, that's not part of my rebuilding process, because I'm going to be very careful who I let in and who I let speak into certain areas of my life, because some people will speak negativity or death into something. Like I said, you can't take back what you said. You
so
can't.
I'll never
I'm
say
going to make
again.
t-shirts and y'all could buy it $5. You can't take it back.
Yeah.
You can't. Damage done. You can say I'm sorry and we can move on. We could talk about it, but you can't take it back. You feel me? You said it. Done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And, like, I don't know. Like, I look at... why you
I
laugh?
got scared.
I'm just saying.
Okay, but I know this is kind of off topic, but I just have to talk about it. Do people really want community?
I don't know.
I don't think they do.
I think it depends on the community that they picture inside their head.
Right.
Because even us, we had a picture of community that when today at church, we found out what real community looked like. We said, ooh.
I was like, "Oh, girl."
We said that wasn't the picture.
That's not what I said yesterday. Yesterday, I'm like, I don't want to give anything to this church. I'm so hurt. I'm so tired of, like, giving. And then I'm like, I just want to take and receive and just
sit there. Yeah.
But I want community.
Yeah.
And today he was like, you have to give.
He's like, this is what
and
community is.
I'm like, no.
You're like, oh, dang it.
Like, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But do people really want community?
I don't know. I think that, I mean, and people can obviously talk about it, like, comment and, like, message us. I think that everyone has a picture of what community is.
Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like I've talked to people this past year that were outside the church that we were going to, and we were trying to, like, make friends and have community. And we're like, do you guys, like, because we were, like, hungering for it. We're like, I need, well, mainly me, because
I was going through my rebuilding process.
You're a triggered little girl. I feel so bad for you. Not a little girl. You're little, but, you know. Anyway. And I was like, do you guys, like, really want community? And they're like, yes, we, like, need it. And then when it really came down to it, where were you?
Yeah, we call it the presence of God syndrome.
We're like, we really just want transparency, vulnerability between, like, believers. Like, I just need that. Right. And we would tell this to these people, and they would be like, so have you been, like, we would share our story, what happened to us. Have you ever been
hurt before?
Have you ever been hurt? And they're like, no.
My life is perfect.
I'm like, you never been hurt?
They said my life is perfect.
We're like, no, never been hurt.
Yeah.
Come to find, find out that ain't the truth. But it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
But that's why I ask, like, do people really want community? Because I feel like people say it, but when it really does come down to it, like, true, pure Jesus community, I don't think people actually want it. Right. Or maybe people don't know what it is that they're craving.
Right.
They've never seen it done.
That might be it too. I think when I first started talking about, like, true authenticity community, like, again, like, part of my building process was community is a very scary thing for me, because I was trained for 5 years, like, isolation is key. Right? If they don't think like you, if they don't look like you, isolation is key. Not the people that you're leading, right? Because they would say, like, you have to learn to lead different people of different mindsets. Yeah. I remember this meeting. I remember exactly what I was wearing. You have to lead people with different mindsets, but you can't be friends with people with different mindsets. That's what they would say. If they don't think like you, if they don't act like you, like, if they're not even, like, I was called, like, if they're not apostles, Sorry, can't hang out with you. Sorry, I'm better than you. And a lot of people were hurt by it, because after everything, a lot of people came forth and was like, we were really hurt because it was always like you and then us. And that's never,
that like hurts my heart.
Yeah, that's never the point.
Yeah, no.
It's never me. I'm not better than you. I heard it preached so beautifully today where he said this. He said, in the early church, we're going to a church now, finally. Thank Jesus. It's been like a year and a half of searching for a church. We finally found a church that's just amazing. Like, it's just perfect. Like, no church is perfect.
It's a good, like, it's perfect for us.
It's perfect, yeah.
For what
like
we need.
where we are at, just separately and just together as friends. Like, it's just a really great church.
Yeah.
Again, like, no church is perfect. Like, obviously every church has its flaws, and I'm with that, but this church is just a home church. It's where I feel home. And he said something so beautifully, and it's such an important lesson as a leader. And he said, a leader in the early church, they taught them how to create habits where they had their own relationship with God. And nowadays, the way church is that it's God, the leader, and then the person that they're leading, or the person that's following them, is kind of getting their fruit and kind of pulling from them. And it's like, no, in the early church, it was, let me teach you how to hold Jesus' hand for yourself.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like, people they're so in desperate need of a God that they make their leader a God.
Right. And and no one is teaching them, like, I'm not your God.
No.
God is flawless. He is perfect.
And you don't have to go through me to get to God. That's the whole point of Jesus.
Exactly. And I think, like, what happens is leaders a lot of the time suffer from superhero complex, when it's like, let me help you. When in reality, like, I am just as imperfect as you are. I am just in need of the same grace you're in need of. Our stories may be different. Our struggles may be different. But the same blood of Jesus that is saving you is the same blood of Jesus I need. The Father just has called me to lead you into teaching you and equipping you how to have a relationship with him and how to pursue the calling that God has for your life.
It's beautiful.
That's what I believe leadership is. And, like, obviously, like, not every person is going to agree with that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm with that. I'm okay with agreeing to disagree on things. But that's how I view leadership, and that's how I'm learning the early church operated. They were so successful because that's how they operated.
Yeah.
They operated based off of what was scriptural, not what was cultural.
Right.
They operated based on how the Lord taught them how to be leaders. They taught people how to own their own relationship with God. I cannot make somebody change. And I think that was one of the hardest things that I came to in this rebuilding rebuilding process.
You've really been through it.
Yeah, there was a lot of stripping down. There was a lot of, like, undoing. Deconstructing to reconstruct.
I just had, like, major flashbacks.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, deconstructing to reconstruct. And so I think that's what I want to talk about is, like, what we've been talking about is the subject of that. Like, my rebuilding process was a lot different because of what it was exactly that I had to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And what it was exactly that I had to walk through and learn through in such a quick amount of time. One, and two, in a sense of, like, Lord, like, I don't know. And it was like a different dependency on God.
On the word.
On the word.
Yeah.
Literally, like.
Yeah, I never really understood why people were saying, like, they always say, like, the word is everything.
Right.
The word is your everything.
Right.
And I never really understood that until I was put in this position.
Right.
'Cause it really all comes down to that.
Right. Yeah. And I would also say that, like, reaching out to people, like, I reached out to therapists. I reached out to old pastors. I just, like, I got to a point in my rebuilding process when I was ready. Because part of my rebuilding process, I trusted nobody. I didn't trust friends. I didn't trust pastors.
I'm still dealing with, like, a lot of trust. I never really used to have trust issues, period. I have awful trust issues now that I'm working on, like, currently.
Right.
Yeah. Keep going.
Because of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a hard time like believing, like, are you lying to me? Are you manipulating me? Or are you just trying to tell me what you want me to hear? Like what, like I went through this space where I'm like trying to decipher you, like where I'm like, like I had so many walls up, so many boundaries, so many, like, you can't get to me. I won't let anybody hurt me like that again. I won't let anybody rip my faith in God like that again. Like, obviously not all of it is on this individual. Like, a lot of it had to do with, it's on my part too. Like, why did I trust this individual like God?
Exactly.
Right? Like that, it's like I own where I went wrong, right? I own where I've mistaked, my mistakes in my relationship with this individual, not placing boundaries that needed to be placed as a woman, as a growing woman of God. There should have been boundaries placed on my end, and how would they have known unless I placed those boundaries? But again, I didn't know that I could do that. You get what I'm saying? Like, and I think like that's what people need to understand, is that like, yes, like there's two sides to it. It's not just one person and all on one individual, but like you have to understand that my walk with God was all shaped by a man claiming to be a pastor, claiming to hear God, claiming that he spends time with the Lord 8 hours a day, claiming. Right? And in that sense, like, of course I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to let you mold my walk with Jesus. Right. So again, like,
especially if it's someone who promises you everything, and and
you took a broken girl and you promised her the world.
Ministry trafficking.
Ministry trafficking at its finest.
Love that.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
What a world.
What a world. Yeah. And so
the church needs to grow up and wake up at the same time.
Yeah. And I think part of the story is learning to trust again. And that's what I did, was learning to trust again isn't like, okay, I'm ready now. It's like, I don't feel ready, but I know I need this. It's paying attention to your need. And I think that's what we learned in this rebuilding process. Like, what do we need right now? What do I need? I need to hear from a pastor. So I reached out to pastors. I need to hear from an adult that knows what they're doing, that I know is not going to try to twist things. You know what I'm saying? Because I've reached out to adults and I'm like, that's not Jesus, right? Where they're like, well, this is who you are. And it's like, that is not it. Like, that ain't it at all. You know what I'm saying? So it's learning to gain confidence in myself, part of my rebuilding process. Like, how do I get confidence in me? How am I confident? You know what I'm saying? Do I hear the Lord? Like, when breaking down the word of God, like learning to mirror everything that people said and filter it through the Bible. Filter it through the word of God.
You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. You will know the truth, and the truth will take you on a process to freedom.
Exactly that.
That's what it means.
Yeah. You'll be on a process, right? And just filtering it through that. Like, is this
whole process?
Is this
gonna
time. Right? And is this is what you're saying gonna allow me to move forward in this process, or is it gonna push me back 10 steps?
Yeah.
That's what's hard about the rebuilding process. Yeah. Like, it's not just like, okay, let's start a new thing. No, that's what people think the rebuilding, but like, okay, I'm going to start something new. Like, no. Like, I need to make sure that what happened and the damage that was done doesn't happen again, and I heal from that so that I don't become that same thing.
Bury it and keep it buried, but make sure it's dead first.
Right. Make sure it's dead.
Do not bury something that's alive.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing too, is like, again, if you're an artist, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too, is the rebuilding process isn't just starting a new thing.
It's not about just forget it and move forward.
It's not. No, the rebuilding process is this is how it works. Is what's a lie, what's truth. When you figure out truth, now filter everything that you have through that truth, through that lens. And is what being spoken to you, even correction, because what was happening is that everyone felt the need to correct. Let me correct you on this. Let me correct you. Like, no. Your job isn't to change me. Your job is to pray for me. Your job is to encourage me. Your job is to love me. And your job is to see what God sees. Right? Yeah. And breathe that into me and pray that the Lord's conviction, that the fear of the Lord is inside of me. Pray those things over me.
Conviction's a gift.
Conviction is a gift. And inquiry comes from conviction, meaning when I'm convicted, I tend to ask questions like, how do I change this?
Yeah, it's a gift. It's
right? And that's what's introduced in the rebuilding process, because there were a lot of things that I was convicted on that I've said,
or
that I've done.
Or we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we're doing, yeah. that I'm like, this can't stay in my life.
No.
This isn't part of my rebuilding process. And so when you start to filter and sift through all that, and then now what you have is bare ground, now you have to find a foundation to build off of that fair ground, because you broke up what was said, that foundation that was there before, which was the breaking process, right? It hurts, it sucks.
God.
You undid all of that. You dug everything up. You figured, now we're in the rebuilding process. Do you want to talk about the rebuilding process? Like
it's scary.
now we went through the whole broken process. Now what happened?
Barely even scratched the surface of it.
Right. But now we're here where it's like foundation. So can you explain to me your rebuilding process? Like, obviously not as long as I took, because I can talk for 9 hours.
You love to go. You just love to talk.
But like, talk to me about yours.
How come it's so easy for you to just talk, and when it comes to me, I'm like,
yeah, but like what I'm saying,
you know how I work, like interview style. Help me out here, bro.
All right, here's my question to you, is that like my story is like what I had to work through, like theologically, what I had to work through personally, trauma that I had to undo and stuff like that. That's different from yours. Your story isn't necessarily that. And what I want to hear is, and I think that what what the listeners would like to hear is like from you, like what exactly was your breaking?
Yeah.
And what was your undoing and digging up? And now that happened, like when you finished all that, what was the piece of like, now I can build?
Yeah. Well, my role, I'll just go back. My role was sorry, it's so hard for me to talk sometimes. I got really distracted just now. My role at the church that I was going to, I was a co-leader in worship, and I did it for 4 years. And that's who I was. My voice was who I was. That's all I knew about myself, was my voice. And my whole life, I've been doing music. I had a music career when I was younger. We'll have a podcast about that, like my whole life and journey with that.
Right.
But my whole life, who I was, my identity was just in what my voice could bring. Or you have a pretty voice.
Right.
Or, oh, wow. Like
powerful.
Yeah. People would say powerful.
Anointed.
Yeah. So when everything happened, I felt that I lost that voice.
Wow.
I felt like, because how I found the church was through the music.
Right.
And the death of that, which we'll get into in a podcast.
Right, yeah.
The church found me dead with no voice.
Right.
One time. Then they rebirthed that.
Right.
It came back to life through leading worship or co-leading worship. And so it came alive a second time. Then it was killed because of what happened, what was said, just all of that. My whole identity was in a church, not Jesus. It was in a church.
Right.
And so I felt that my identity had died. My voice had died a second time.
Right.
So at that point, you're like, all right, like, that's it for me. Because my voice was everything. I didn't care. Like, nobody really seemed to care about my personality, or at least how I saw it. I don't know. Wow. I don't know your interpretation of that. I don't know how people saw me there. But so that whole process, I had to go on a journey of finding my voice, not for other people, but for myself. Because music and singing and all of that, my whole life up until this point was for other people.
Right.
People seeing the gift that I had and taking advantage of it, using it for their benefit. And so I had to go through that whole process of refinding who I was apart from my voice first.
Right.
Learning who I was. I actually physically lost my voice. I couldn't sing. I was literally it was the weirdest experience,
Right.
It was the weirdest experience that I've ever experienced. I physically lost my voice. And then I found it again, but it was, I don't know, like the moment. I can't say a specific moment or time that I found it. I think I just came to the realization that I'm more than just a gift. Who I am as a person is a gift.
Wow, that's
not
good.
my gifting.
That's good.
So that's kind of thing that I'm going through.
No, it's good. Yeah, and if you're wondering where we're sitting in what we call Lazarus Studios.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Lazarus Studios.
Yeah, so it's cool because I totally forgot. That's why I need interview
Lazarus Studios.
Yeah, so I once I found my voice again, I was like, you know what? I want to help other people find their voice. And I want to create an atmosphere where really small artists who don't have the money or the space or any of that to have their own studio or go to a studio can come to a place where the Holy Spirit is and just create, whether they're saved or not.
Right.
I don't care. Jesus doesn't care.
Right.
He wants you to create and use your gift.
Come as you are.
Yeah. And it's through that they find him. So I created Lazarus Studios because my dream died 2 times. And the Lord breathed life back into it.
Wow.
And so I wanted to create a space where other people can experience that breath of God.
Woo.
So hence Lazarus Studios.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So basically what we're trying to say here in this podcast is that the rebuilding process is hard.
Yeah.
It could be messy. There are days that you don't even want to rebuild anymore.
Absolutely.
You know, but it's a beautiful process. Mm-hmm. I think the key is to honor the process, celebrate the process, and every little thing that you've done that aids in your rebuilding, celebrate that moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's big. It's a big moment. It's something that's necessary. So I think the point that we're trying to make is that this journey has been messy. It's been hard, and it'll continue to be messy, and there will be hard moments and there'll be great moments. Mm-hmm. But it's so worth it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's worth it.
There's hope at the end, and I know it's annoying for people who are probably going through a lot. For people who are going through a lot right now, there is hope, and that's annoying to hear, but it's true. We have genuinely lived through that. Yeah. And we're experiencing life again in a totally brand new way. Right. That we wouldn't have experienced if we didn't go through this. It almost makes you appreciate life more. Exactly. And it makes you excited for life.
Yeah, for the new thing. And I think that's important, is that these are snapshot moments in our lives.
Yeah, gain perspective, I think, is really important too. Gaining a perspective in the really dark moments. It's hard, but try to see yourself from a lifted perspective. Right. Because once you get bird's eye view, things don't seem as bad.
Right. And I think also surround yourself with people that can help give you vision.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You know,
vision's really important.
Because I think sometimes it's hard for us, and I think that's something that we experience as alone, trying to gain vision, individually or even together, trying to help each other, gain vision for each other's lives. But I think that's the key, is that we had our friendship that kind of helped us in that sense, gain vision for each other's lives and individually. So that's the point that I'm trying to make, is make sure that you surround yourself with someone that can help you gain vision in this process. Right. Because if you're alone and there's nothing but isolation, it's going to be hard to gain process. It's going to be hard to gain vision. Right. I mean, perspective during that process. Yep. So respect the journey, honor the journey.
Yeah. Be honest through it.
Be honest, yeah.
Don't lie to yourself. Just be honest. It's so much faster and easier. Yeah. It really is.
Because eventually it's going to come out.
Eventually you face it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our first episode.
Yeah. This is really fun.
Yeah, if you guys liked it, like and subscribe, comment. Like I said before, we want to hear from you. Yeah. You know? So make sure that you guys comment. Make sure you guys DM us. Please. We have an Instagram. We have a YouTube handle. And so we'll post that all in the description. So make sure that you guys follow us, subscribe, comment. We want to hear from you. We want to know what topics you want to hear from us.
Yeah.
And again, like if you want to be a guest here, if you want to feature your songs here, send them in. We want to hear it.
We really want to hear them.
We really want to hear it. And so, we love you guys. See you next week.
See ya.